Have you ever watched a team walk into one of the toughest road environments in the league and somehow leave looking even stronger than when they arrived? That's exactly what happened when the Indiana Fever stepped onto the floor in Seattle. Long before the opening tip, the spotlight wasn't just on basketball. Every camera seemed locked onto Caitlin Clark. Every headline questioned whether Indiana could keep its incredible run alive, and every fan inside the arena wanted to see if the Fever's explosive offense would finally slow down. Instead, the opposite happened. By the time the night was over, the scoreboard told one story, the record books told another, and the rest of the league was left wondering if this Indiana team had officially become the biggest problem in the WNBA. The pressure surrounding this matchup had been building for days. Seattle wasn't simply preparing for another regular season game. They were preparing for a player who had already torched them in their previous meeting and was playing the best basketball of her young professional career. Every scouting report centered around one mission: don't let Caitlin Clark get comfortable. Easier said than done. Teams all over the league had already tried trapping her, switching defenders, forcing her toward the sidelines, and making every catch difficult. Some found temporary success, but none had discovered a formula that worked for 4 full quarters. That challenge became even bigger because Indiana wasn't relying on just one superstar anymore. Earlier in the season, opponents could focus almost entirely on slowing Clark down. Now, the Fever had developed into one of the league's deepest offensive teams. Kelsey Mitchell had found another scoring gear. Aliyah Boston was becoming more dominant in the paint. Sophie Cunningham was knocking down timely three-pointers, and role players were embracing their opportunities. Suddenly, stopping Indiana wasn't about containing one player. It was about surviving wave after wave of offensive pressure. Seattle knew all of that before the opening whistle. Their home crowd knew it too. Every time Clark touched the basketball during warm-ups, you could hear the reaction from the stands. Some fans cheered, others booed loudly. That's what happens when one player becomes the biggest storyline in the sport. Love her or criticize her, everyone watches. Every possession feels bigger. Every shot becomes a headline waiting to happen. When the game finally tipped off, Seattle wasted no time showing exactly how it planned to defend Clark. Defenders picked her up almost the moment she crossed half court. Passing lanes disappeared. Bodies bumped her on nearly every trip down the floor. The message couldn't have been clearer. Nothing would come easy tonight. For most young stars, that's exactly the kind of start that creates frustration. Players begin arguing with officials. They rush shots. They try forcing highlight plays that aren't there. That's often when games slip away. But Clark looked completely unfazed. She wasn't trying to score 30 points in the first 5 minutes. Instead, she focused on reading the defense one possession at a time. If Seattle sent 2 defenders, she found the open teammate. If they stayed home on shooters, she attacked the paint. Every decision slowed the Storm's momentum just enough to keep Indiana in complete control. That's one of the biggest reasons Clark has continued to evolve. Her game isn't built around forcing spectacular plays every possession. It's built around making the correct basketball decision, even if it doesn't show up on the highlight reel. Sometimes that means launching a logo 3. Other times it means making a simple pass that eventually leads to an open shot somewhere else on the floor. Those decisions don't always make social media clips, but they win games. Meanwhile, the Fever started finding their rhythm. Sophie Cunningham wasted no time making Seattle pay for collapsing too aggressively on Clark. The veteran guard confidently stepped into open looks and buried them, forcing the Storm to rethink their defensive strategy almost immediately. Every made shot stretched the defense a little farther, creating even more space for Indiana's offense to operate. Then came the transition game, and that's where Indiana really started separating itself. Defensive rebounds instantly turned into fast breaks. Clark pushed the pace before Seattle could organize its defense. Teammates sprinted into open lanes, and suddenly the Storm were chasing instead of controlling the action. Basketball games can change incredibly fast when one team consistently scores before the defense is set, and Indiana was proving exactly why it has become one of the league's most dangerous transition offenses. The crowd tried to swing the momentum back. Every defensive stop was met with a roar. Every Indiana turnover brought the fans to life. Seattle fed off that energy and answered with Sevi. Seattle refused to let the game turn into a highlight reel for Indiana without a fight. As the second quarter settled in, the Storm started playing with far more urgency. Every loose ball became a battle. Every rebound turned into a wrestling match, and every possession felt like it carried extra weight. The home crowd, which had gone unusually quiet after Indiana's explosive start, suddenly found its voice again. One defensive stop led to another, and the building came alive with the belief that momentum was finally beginning to shift. For the first time all night, Indiana looked slightly uncomfortable. A few possessions ended without clean looks. Seattle's defense closed passing lanes quicker than before, and the Fever weren't getting the same easy opportunities in transition. That's exactly the type of stretch where games can change. One hot streak from the home team can erase an entire quarter of great basketball in just a few minutes. Seattle's biggest spark came from its backcourt. Every made jumper energized the crowd, and each defensive stop added more pressure on Indiana to respond. Instead of allowing the Fever to race up and down the floor, the Storm slowed the pace and forced every possession into a half-court battle. It wasn't flashy, but it was effective. Little by little, the comfortable Indiana lead began shrinking. Then came the moment that tested the Fever more than anything else. The whistles became one of the biggest talking points among fans watching the game. Several physical plays involving Caitlin Clark sparked debate across social media almost instantly. Some viewers believed she absorbed heavy contact without getting calls, while others felt the officials were simply letting both teams play through physical defense. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was impossible to ignore: the intensity had reached another level. Many stars let frustration control them in moments like this. They stop focusing on basketball and start focusing on the officials. Clark chose a different path. Instead of throwing her hands in the air after every missed whistle, she immediately sprinted back on defense. Instead of forcing impossible shots to prove a point, she trusted the offense. Every possession became another opportunity to answer with basketball instead of emotion. That mindset has quietly become one of the biggest reasons for her rapid growth. The flashy passes and deep three-pointers grab the headlines, but composure is what separates great players from future legends. Seattle continued pressing, believing fatigue would eventually slow Indiana's offense. But the harder they worked to contain Clark, the more space opened for everyone else. Kelsey Mitchell started finding cleaner driving lanes. Sophie Cunningham continued making smart cuts away from the ball. Indiana's role players weren't trying to do too much. They simply kept making the extra pass until the defense finally broke. That's when Clark reminded everyone why she's one of the most dangerous offensive players in the league. One possession began with tight defense nearly 30 feet from the basket. Clark calmly dribbled between her legs, used a screen, took one quick step to create space, and launched a three-pointer that barely moved the net. The arena fell silent for a split second before thousands of fans reacted at once. Even opposing crowds have learned there's something different about watching a shooter with unlimited range. Just a few trips later, she attacked the basket instead. Instead of settling for another outside shot, Clark drove directly into traffic, absorbed contact, finished the play, and calmly walked to the free throw line. It wasn't just about scoring points anymore. She was forcing Seattle's defense to guess wrong every single possession, guard too close, and she'd drive. Give her space and she'd pull up from deep. Send help, and she'd find an open teammate. There simply wasn't a comfortable answer. As the third quarter began, Seattle made one last serious push. The Storm knocked down difficult shots, tightened up defensively, and trimmed the lead enough to make Indiana fans nervous. For the first time all night, it genuinely felt like the game could swing either way. That's exactly when the Fever's leader delivered her biggest response. Clark completely took over. She scored from beyond the arc. She attacked the rim. She controlled the tempo. She found teammates whenever defenders overcommitted.